She walked through town every day, head down, wearing the same old shoes and a faded backpack that had clearly seen better days. Most people didn't even notice her, and the ones who did, they whispered, rolled their eyes, or simply ignored her. To them, she was just the quiet girl from the edge of town, living in a tiny house with peeling paint and overgrown grass. No one ever asked her name. No one cared to know her story, but everything changed the day she stood on that stage. It started as just another community talent show, something light for a weekend evening. People came for laughs, for familiar faces, for the usual acts. No one expected anything special from her. In fact, when her name was called, a few people even chuckled. Some didn't clap. She walked up slowly, clutching a small notebook in one hand. Her voice shook as she spoke, but within seconds, the room fell silent. What she shared that night, words, memories, emotion, struck something deep. It wasn't just a performance, it was truth. From that moment, the entire town saw her differently. But what stunned them even more came after the applause, because her story didn't end on that stage. It only began there. What she revealed next made people question everything they thought they knew, not just about her, but about themselves. And when her true worth came to light, no one could believe what they had overlooked for so long. Her name was Leela, though hardly anyone in the town ever used it. Teachers called her Miss, classmates referred to her as that girl, and neighbors barely gave her a second glance. She lived with her grandfather in a small, run-down cottage at the edge of town. Most assumed they were just getting by, surviving on pension checks and keeping to themselves. But what no one knew was that Leela spent her nights filling pages with poetry, music, and stories, things too deep for her age, too raw to share with anyone. Until that night. The talent show had been her grandfather's idea. Let them hear you just once, he told her. The world needs your voice, even if it doesn't know it yet. She hesitated, afraid of being laughed at. For years, she'd heard whispers in the school halls about her clothes, her silence, her home. She was used to being invisible. That stage, though, gave her something she never had before, a moment. As she read from her notebook that night, the air changed. The crowd, once restless and dismissive, leaned in. Her words told stories of heartbreak, loss, resilience, things the town had felt but never spoken out loud. People were moved, even if they couldn't quite understand why. But the real shock came after the show, when a man no one recognized approached her backstage. He wasn't from town. He wore a dark suit and held a card in his hand. "Leela," he said, "we need to talk." Leela stared at the man for a moment, unsure whether to run or speak. No one ever looked at her like that, with focus, like she mattered. He handed her the card. It was heavy, embossed with gold lettering. A New York talent agency. She didn't understand. "We've been looking for a voice like yours," he said, his tone serious. "Your words, they carry something rare." Her fingers tightened around the card, and just like that, her world shifted. Word spread fast around town. Some people were proud, but many weren't. They called it luck, or said she must have copied her work. A few even accused her grandfather of pulling strings. Kids at school whispered behind her back louder than before. Some teachers who'd ignored her for years suddenly started smiling too much, asking strange questions. But Leela wasn't sure who to trust. At home, her grandfather remained quiet. He supported her, but something weighed on him. Leila noticed him pacing late at night, phone in hand, worried eyes staring out the window. He'd spent years hiding their past, who the parents really were, and why Leela had always been told to keep her head down. Now everything was rising to the surface. Meanwhile, the man from the agency kept calling. He wanted Leela to fly out, to sign papers. But she hadn't made a decision yet. She wasn't sure if this was truly a chance to be heard, or a trap disguised as opportunity. And deep down, she could feel something bigger was coming. Days passed, and the calls from the agency became more frequent. The man's tone had shifted, from polite interest to quiet urgency. "You don't have much time," he warned. "Opportunities like this don't wait forever." Leila felt torn. The world she'd dreamed of, performing, being heard, having her work read by more than just her grandfather, was right in front of her. But something about it didn't feel right, especially with the way her grandfather kept avoiding her questions. One evening, she finally asked him directly, "What aren't you telling me?" He hesitated, then simply said, "Some truths come with a cost." Before she could press him further, he stepped outside for his evening walk. That was the last time she saw him that night. The next morning, a letter sat on the table, written in his familiar handwriting. He had gone to settle something from the past, something about her parents, and told her not to follow. But Leila couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling growing in her chest. She grabbed the letter and the agency's card and walked into town. There, people were gathered at the cafe, murmuring. Someone had spotted her grandfather at the old courthouse, the same place he'd once worked before being dismissed under strange circumstances. The tension in town was thick. Whispers about old secrets, family ties, and hidden money filled the air. Leila stood in the center of it all, feeling eyes on her. She had a choice: stay silent or walk into the courthouse and face whatever was waiting. Leila pushed open the heavy courthouse doors, heart pounding. The old building smelled of dust and secrets. She stepped inside and found her grandfather sitting alone on one of the benches in the hallway, holding a thick envelope. His face was pale, more tired than she'd ever seen it. When he looked up, his eyes said everything: fear, regret, and something else she couldn't quite place. He didn't speak right away. Then he handed her the envelope and said, "Your mother never died in that car crash. She disappeared for your protection." Leila froze. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Her grandfather lowered his voice and continued, "She was part of something powerful, something dangerous. And the man from the agency, he's not who he says he is." Leila's mind raced. The offer, the pressure, the urgent phone calls, it all started to feel like a setup. She opened the envelope and found official documents, her mother's name, sealed court records, and an old photograph. Standing next to her mother was the same man who claimed to be from the talent agency. Everything shifted in that moment. Her performance hadn't just drawn attention, it had triggered something deeper. Someone out there had been watching her for years, waiting for the right moment to pull her into the same world her mother vanished from. Now Leila wasn't just deciding on a career. She was walking a path that could reveal buried truths or lead her straight into danger. And time was running out. Leila's fingers trembled as she held the photograph. Her grandfather, voice barely steady, explained how her mother had once worked undercover to expose a network using creative talent as a front for illegal activity, money laundering, blackmail, worse. When she got too close to the truth, she vanished. Everyone thought she'd died. But now this so-called agent was back, and he wasn't looking for poetry. He was tying up loose ends. Suddenly, the courthouse door creaked open. The man in the suit stood there, calm but calculating. "Leila," he said smoothly, "I think we need to finish our conversation." Her grandfather stepped between them. "It's over. We know who you are." But the man just smiled and pulled a document from his briefcase. "This is a contract. Nothing more," he said. "Sign it, and your life changes overnight." Leila stared at it. All her dreams, everything she had ever wanted, dangled in front of her. But she also saw the trap. The fine print wasn't about music rights, it was about control. Ownership of her work, her name, her story. She looked him in the eye. "I'm not for sale," she said quietly. Before the man could react, a woman's voice echoed from the doorway behind him. "She gets that from me." Everyone turned. Standing in the light was a woman with familiar eyes, her mother. Gasps filled the room. Leila stepped back, stunned. The truth had finally come out, but it brought a new beginning none of them could have expected. Leila stood frozen as her mother crossed the room, eyes full of emotion. For a second, everything else disappeared. No agency, no lies, no past, just the mother she thought she'd lost forever. They embraced tightly, years of pain melting into silent tears. Her grandfather's shoulders finally relaxed, the weight of decades lifting in that moment. The man with the briefcase didn't say another word. As soon as her mother showed her government ID and revealed her true identity, he realized the game was over. Within hours, law enforcement stepped in, taking him into custody. It turned out he had been involved in multiple identity fraud cases, targeting talented young creators like Layla to exploit them. Back home, the town buzzed with the news. People who had once ignored or underestimated Leela now spoke her name with respect. But she didn't let the attention change her. She returned to the same cafe where she used to write, quietly picking up her notebook again. Only now, her words held more strength, more purpose. She chose not to sign with any agency right away. Instead, she and her mother started a foundation to protect young artists from being manipulated, offering them guidance and support. Her grandfather remained by her side, finally at peace. The truth had been hidden for years, but in the end, it was Layla's honesty, courage, and talent that brought it to light. And the girl they all once overlooked became the voice the world never saw coming.